There is a moment, and if you have lived through it, you will recognize it instantly, when you realize that what you thought was love was actually a hunt. That the warmth you felt in the beginning, the attention, the way they seemed to understand you better than anyone ever had, none of it was coincidence. None of it was fate. It was selection, deliberate, calculated, and cold. And the most disturbing part is not that it happened to you. The most disturbing part is why it happened to you. Because they did not choose you despite your strengths. They chose you because of them. This is the truth you were never supposed to arrive at. Because the moment you understand how a narcissist actually selects their target, the entire illusion collapses. The story they told you about yourself, that you were too sensitive, too needy, too much, falls apart completely. And what rises in its place is something far more uncomfortable for them and far more powerful for you: clarity. Most people who have been through a relationship with a narcissist spend years asking the wrong question. They ask, "What is wrong with me?" They dissect their own flaws. They replay conversations at 3 in the morning, searching for the moment they went wrong, the sentence they should not have said, the boundary they failed to hold. They carry the weight of the relationship's failure as though it were entirely their fault. And this is not an accident. This is by design. Because a narcissist's greatest weapon is not cruelty. It is not manipulation. It is the ability to make you the subject of every question while they remain invisible, to keep your eyes on yourself so they are never on them. But today we turn the lens. Today we look at them. We look at the mechanism. We look at the process. And by the time you finish this, you will understand not just what happened, but why you specifically were in the room when it did. To understand how a narcissist chooses their target, you first have to understand what a narcissist is actually looking for, and it is not what most people assume. The common image of a narcissist is someone looking for a weak person, someone passive, someone easily controlled, someone without a spine. And while there are certainly predatory personalities who operate that way, the true narcissist, the kind with depth to their disorder, is not looking for weakness. Weakness bores them. Weakness offers no resistance. And without resistance, there is no conquest. Without conquest, there is no supply. What the narcissist is looking for is specific. They are looking for someone with an open heart, in a world that has largely closed its own. Someone who still believes in people despite having reasons not to. Someone who leads with empathy before they lead with suspicion. Someone whose first instinct when they meet a wounded person is not to retreat, but to understand. In other words, they are looking for the rarest kind of human being alive. And there is a profound and terrible irony in this, because the qualities the narcissist hunts for are the same qualities that make a person extraordinary: depth, loyalty, the capacity to love without conditions, the willingness to see potential in someone even when the evidence is thin. These are not weaknesses. These are gifts. But in the presence of a narcissist, gifts become vulnerabilities.
The willingness to see potential in someone, even when the evidence is thin. These are not weaknesses. These are gifts. But in the presence of a narcissist, gifts become vulnerabilities. Not because you are foolish, but because you are operating by a set of rules that the narcissist simply does not follow. Think about the early days. Think about how it felt. There was an intensity to it that felt different from anything before. They seemed to see you, really see you. Not just the version of you that you show the world, but the deeper version. The one that has opinions at midnight. The one that feels things more than they can always explain. The one that has always felt slightly out of place in rooms full of people who seem perfectly comfortable being surface level. And suddenly, here was someone who matched that depth, who spoke your language, who made you feel, perhaps for the first time, that being the way you are was not a burden, but a gift. This is called mirroring, and it is the narcissist's most sophisticated tool. Before they can use you, they must become you. They study your values, your wounds, your dreams, your fears, and they reflect them back at you with surgical precision. They do not do this consciously in the way a con artist rehearses a script. Many do it instinctively, driven by a psychological hunger so deep it has developed its own intelligence. They become whoever you need them to be, because getting you to lower your guard is not the goal. Getting you to open the door completely is, and you do, because everything they are showing you is real. It is just not theirs. The selection process begins long before the first conversation. A narcissist reads a room differently than most people do. Where you might walk into a social setting and look for connection, they walk in and look for candidates. They are scanning, assessing, watching for specific signals. Who listens more than they speak? Who laughs at someone else's joke even when it is not that funny because they don't want anyone to feel bad? Who checks on the person standing alone in the corner? Who deflects compliments? Who apologizes when someone else bumps into them? These small, seemingly insignificant behaviors are to a narcissist what light is to a moth. They are the indicators of a conscience, of empathy, of someone who has been taught either by nature or pain to put others before themselves. And that person, the one with the conscience, the one with the conscience, the one with the empathy, the one who still believes that people are fundamentally good even after life has offered considerable evidence, to the contrary, that person is exactly who the narcissist has been looking for. You were not chosen because you were broken. You were chosen because you were whole, and they needed what you had, because it was the one thing they could not manufacture inside themselves. There is something that nobody tells you about the narcissist selection process, and it is this. They are not operating randomly. They are not stumbling into relationships by accident and then happening to cause damage along the way. There is a pattern, a preference, a psychological blueprint that guides them towards specific people with specific qualities. And once you understand this blueprint, once you see the architecture of how they operate, something shifts inside you permanently, because you stop asking why you were not enough, and you start understanding why you were exactly what they were searching for. Let us talk about what psychologists call the empathy gradient. In any group of people, there's a spectrum of empathic capacity.
Not into the exhausting project of trying to heal someone who has not chosen to heal themselves, but inward toward yourself, toward the parts of you that have been giving outward so consistently, so generously, so completely, that they have never been properly turned inward and allowed to nourish the one person who needed it the most, you. Here is something that does not get said enough in conversations about narcissistic abuse recovery, particularly to men. The empathy you carry, the depth, the loyalty, the capacity to love with your whole self, rather than a carefully managed portion of it. These are not feminine qualities, despite what a culture of performed toughness might have suggested to you. These are human qualities, and in a man, they are not weakness dressed up in sensitivity. They are strength that has not yet been properly aimed. The man who can feel deeply, who can read a room, who can hold space for another person's pain without flinching, who can love with consistency and intention rather than performance and ego. That man is not a target waiting to happen. That man, once he understands himself clearly, is essentially unmanipulable, because manipulation requires a gap between what someone shows and what they feel. It requires the kind of internal confusion that comes from never having examined your own patterns. Once you have done that examination, once you have looked at the blueprint your history created,